Billionaire invited his ex-wife to a yacht party. She came along with her quadruplets. What happened next would shock you. Julian Harcourt had negotiated billion-dollar deals with presidents. He had outmaneuvered corporate raiders who had destroyed lesser men. He had stood in rooms full of the most powerful people on earth and commanded their attention without raising his voice. But standing on the deck of his $200 million mega yacht, surrounded by champagne glasses and designer gowns, he found himself completely and utterly paralyzed. 4 children stood before him, 4 children with his eyes. The woman beside them spoke first, her voice cutting through the shocked silence like a blade through silk. "They are yours, Julian. All 4 of them. And you have exactly 30 seconds to decide what kind of man you want to be." Julian's throat closed around words that refused to form. His gaze moved from one small face to the next, doing calculations that were 4 years too late. The boy on the left had his jawline. The girl with the wild curls had her mother's smile but his stubborn chin. The quiet one in the back watched him with hazel eyes that Julian saw in his own mirror every single morning. And the one in front, the little commander clearly in charge of this operation, she had both of them in her face. A perfect merger of everything they had once been together. "Why?" he finally managed, his voice cracking on a single syllable. "Why did you never tell me?" Nadia Zahir's expression didn't waver. She stood like a queen holding court, wrapped in emerald silk that she had designed herself, radiating the kind of power that came from surviving the unsurvivable. "You want to have that conversation now? Here, in front of 300 guests and 4 children who are watching their father see them for the first time? Because I can give you the answer, Julian, but it won't be pretty." The eldest child, the girl in front, tugged at her mother's hand. "Mama, is this the part where adults yell at each other? Because if so, we have concerns." Despite everything, despite the cameras surely pointed in their direction and the whispers already spreading through the crowd like wildfire, Nadia almost smiled. "No yelling, baby. We're just talking." The boy with the analytical eyes spoke next, talking very loud with our faces. "That's yelling without sound." Julian made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. He honestly could not tell the difference anymore. His entire understanding of reality had just collapsed, and these children, his children, were cutting through the wreckage with the precision of tiny surgeons. "I want to know them," he said, the words breaking from him before conscious thought could intervene. "Really know them, please. Whatever it takes. Whatever you need from me." Nadia studied him with those dark eyes that had once looked at him with love, then with devastation, and now with something he could not quite read. "That's exactly what you said 4 years ago," she replied quietly. "Right before you chose someone else." The accusation hung in the Mediterranean air, heavy as stone, true as gravity. Julian felt it land in his chest like a physical blow. But that is not where this story begins. Let me take you back. Back to a morning in Marrakesh, Morocco, where morning light painted gold across terracotta walls and 4 beautiful, chaotic reasons for Nadia's survival were currently destroying her kitchen in the name of cooking breakfast. The invitation had arrived on cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that caught the sunlight streaming through Nadia Zahir's studio windows. She held it between paint-stained fingers, reading the words that threatened to unravel 4 years of carefully constructed peace. "You are cordially invited to the maiden voyage of Poseidon's Grace, Mediterranean coast. Black tie. August 15th. No personal note, no explanation, just Julian Harcourt's name printed at the bottom in elegant script. As if the past had never happened. As if she had not fled London with her heart shattered and her future uncertain. As if 4 beautiful reasons for that flight were not currently creating what sounded like a culinary catastrophe 1 floor below. "Mama," Zara's voice carried from downstairs, followed by a crash that suggested culinary ambitions had far exceeded capability. "The pancakes are escaping." Nadia set the invitation down on her drafting table, her decision already forming before conscious thought could intervene. She knew, even then, that she was going to respond. She knew she was going to face Julian Harcourt on his floating palace with 4 children he did not. No existed. She knew it was either going to be the bravest thing she had ever done or the stupidest. Possibly both. She descended the stairs of her converted riad, stepping into what could only be described as organized pandemonium. Her 4-year-old quadruplets had transformed the kitchen into what appeared to be a flower-based crime scene. White powder covered every surface. Batter dripped from the ceiling in ways that defied the laws of physics. The air smelled of burning and ambition in roughly equal measure. Zara, the self-appointed leader of this particular revolution, stood on a chair wielding a spatula like a sword. Her wild curls had somehow acquired enough flour to make her look like a tiny powdered ghost with very strong opinions. "We wanted to make you breakfast," Zahra announced with the confidence of someone who had absolutely not failed at anything. "But the pancakes have revolutionary ideas about staying in the pan." Malik had somehow gotten batter in his curly black hair, despite wearing what he had insisted was a professional chef hat. It was, in fact, a colander. He was examining the mess with the analytical detachment of a scientist observing a failed experiment. "The heat distribution on this stove is inconsistent," he announced. "I think that's the problem. Also, Zahra added too much milk." "I added exactly what the recipe said," Zahra countered. "The recipe said 1 cup. You used a drinking glass. Those are different measurements." Before this could escalate into a full-scale sibling tribunal, Nadia located her other 2 children. Amira sat cross-legged on the floor in the only clean corner of the kitchen, methodically arranging blueberries in geometric patterns. She was completely ignoring the chaos around her with the focus of a meditation master, apparently deciding that if she could not control her siblings, she could at least control the organization of small fruit. And Rayan, her quiet observer, he stood in the doorway watching everything unfold with those devastating hazel eyes that were absolutely, undeniably his father's. He did not speak, but his small hand found Nadia's as she surveyed the damage. He always knew when she was struggling. "We can clean it up," Rayan said softly. "It is not as bad as it looks." Nadia surveyed the disaster with the practiced calm of someone who had learned, through 4 years of parenting quadruplets, that panic was completely useless in the face of their collective determination. "I can see that you were ambitious this morning. How about we revolutionize together?" 20 minutes later, the kitchen was marginally less destroyed, and they sat around the worn wooden table eating pancakes that were only slightly burned. Nadia had salvaged what she could, added more batter, and produced something resembling edible breakfast, while her 4 small humans watched with the satisfied expressions of people who had definitely meant for this to happen. This was her life now. Beautiful, exhausting, completely hers. Morning light painted gold across terracotta walls. The sound of the Medina waking up drifted through open windows. Her children ate pancakes and argued about whether dragons could be purple, a debate that Zahra was winning through sheer force of personality rather than logic. Nadia had built this life from nothing. From the moment she had walked away from Julian Harcourt, with only her portfolio, her pride, and a pregnancy she had not even known about until a week later, she had built an empire from this studio. Zahir Textiles employed 47 artisans. Her work had been featured in Vogue and Elle. She had clients on 3 continents and a reputation for sustainable luxury that had made her name in North African design circles. She had done all of it with 4 infants who had needed her constantly, starting from nothing, asking no one for help, and absolutely never, not once, reaching out to the man who had shattered her heart so completely that she had genuinely wondered if the pieces could ever be reassembled. "Ma is thinking very loud again." Malik's voice cut through her reverie. His perception was unnerving even after 4 years. "Your face gets quiet when your brain gets noisy." Nadia looked at her son, at all 4 of them, and made a decision she had been avoiding for 4 years. "I received an invitation today," she said, believing in honesty even with 4-year-olds, especially with 4-year-olds actually. They had an uncanny ability to detect deception. "To a party on a boat. Someone I used to know invited me." "A big boat?" Rayan asked, speaking for the first time that morning. "Very big. A yacht." "What is a yacht?" Amira looked up from the geometric pattern she was now creating with her remaining blueberries. "It is like a floating palace. Very expensive, very fancy. The kind of boat that people with more money than sense tend to purchase." "Are we going?" Zahra's eyes lit with the adventurous spirit that was absolutely going to give Nadia gray hair by the time she turned 40. "Please say yes. I have never been to a floating palace. I do not know yet. It is complicated. Adults always say that when the answer is yes, but they are scared," Malik observed, cutting through adult complexity with the precision of a 4-year-old who had no patience for euphemism. "You make the same face when you are scared about something but trying to pretend you are not." Nadia looked at her children. These 4 humans she had built and raised, who somehow combined the best parts of her and Julian while being entirely their own people. Zahra with her fierce leadership and wild imagination. Malik with his analytical mind and unsettling emotional intelligence. Amira with her love of patterns and systems and order. Rayan with his quiet depths and those eyes that saw everything. They deserved to know their father. She had been telling herself for 4 years that the time was not right, that Julian had made his choice, that she was protecting them from potential heartbreak. But maybe she was finally willing to admit she had been protecting herself. "Finish your breakfast," she said quietly. "Then we need to have an important conversation. Before I continue with this life-changing conversation that is about to happen, I need to pause and speak directly to you. When I created Mr. Dalton's story house, I wanted to build a space where we could explore the messy, complicated reality of second chances. Not fairy tales. Real stories about real people navigating impossible situations. You are still watching because something about Nadia's story resonates with you. Maybe you have been hurt by someone you trusted. Maybe you have had to build something from nothing. Maybe you are trying to figure out right now whether broken things can ever truly be fixed. If this story is speaking to you, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. Because what happens next in this story is going to challenge everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and the courage it takes to give someone a second chance. Trust me, you do not want to miss where this goes. Now back to Marrakesh, where 4 children are about to learn something that will change their lives forever. After breakfast, Nadia settled her children in the living room, surrounded by the artwork that had made her name. Bold geometric patterns covered the walls, pieces that merged her Moroccan heritage with contemporary sensibilities. Each one represented months of work, years of development, a career she had built from absolutely nothing, while 4 infants had demanded her constant attention. She had proved something to herself in those early years. Something important, that she did not need anyone to survive. That she could build something beautiful from broken pieces. That the best revenge against someone who had underestimated her was simply becoming someone who could not be ignored. But now she was about to undo 4 years of careful separation, 4 years of protecting her children from a father who did not know they existed. And she had to do it honestly, because these 4 small humans deserved the truth. "The person who invited me to the yacht," she began carefully, watching their faces for any sign of distress, "is your father." The silence that followed was profound. 4 pairs of eyes stared at her with varying degrees of comprehension. "We have a father?" Zahra asked slowly, as if testing the concept, rolling it around in her mouth like an unfamiliar food she was not sure she wanted to swallow. "Everyone has a father biologically," Amira corrected with her characteristic precision. "That is simply how human reproduction works. The question is whether ours is involved in our lives." "He has not been," Nadia confirmed, "not because he did not want to be, but because he did not know you existed. I never told him I was pregnant when I left London." Malik processed this with the analytical approach he brought to everything. "Why not?" "Because I was hurt and scared and trying to survive. Sometimes adults make choices that do not make sense to children because we are dealing with feelings that are too big to explain simply." Rayhan, who had been silent through this entire exchange, spoke quietly. "Tell us the story. From the beginning. We are old enough." He was right. They were old enough for truth, even if the truth was messy and imperfect. Children always knew when adults were lying to them anyway. She had learned that lesson early in her parenting journey. Nadia took a breath and began. "I met your father in London 4.5 years ago. I was a textile consultant working with his company on a design project for their new headquarters. He was brilliant, driven, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately became the center of gravity. Everyone orbited around him without even realizing they were doing it." "Was he handsome?" Zahra asked, because Zahra was 4 and had recently discovered the concept of romance through animated movies. "Very handsome," Nadia admitted. "But that was not why I fell in love with him. I fell in love with him because he saw me, really saw me, not as a junior consultant or a pretty face or someone to impress. He saw my work and understood what I was trying to do. He challenged me, made me better, made me feel like I could do anything." She paused, remembering those early months. The way Julian had looked at her across conference tables, the late-night conversations about art and ambition, and what they wanted to build in the world. The first time he had kissed her, in his office after everyone else had gone home, breaking every professional boundary she had set for herself and not caring at all. "We were together for 6 months, she continued. "And it was wonderful. He asked me to marry him, gave me a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. We made plans, a life, a future." "What happened?" Malik asked. Because something obviously happened. Someone else happened. Her name was Celeste Montague. She was everything I was not. Aristocratic family, old money, the kind of woman who had been raised to move in Julian's world since birth, the kind of woman his family and business partners thought he should be with. Nadia felt the old anger stirring, but she kept her voice even. Her children did not need to inherit her bitterness. I found photographs of them together, at a hotel in Prague, the same hotel Julian had told me he could not visit because of business meetings. When I confronted him, he told me I was being paranoid, that I was sabotaging our relationship with my jealousy. He chose to protect his pride instead of hearing my pain. He lied to you, Zahir said, with the absolute moral clarity that only a 4-year-old could muster. That is very bad. It felt like lying to me, yes. So I left. I walked away with nothing but my portfolio and my dignity and my broken heart. And 1 week later, I found out I was pregnant. She watched her children process this information, watched them understand in their own ways the magnitude of what she was telling them. With us, Amira said, all 4 of us. At the same time, with you, all 4 of you. I found out at the doctor's office. I had been feeling sick and tired, and I thought it was just heartbreak making me ill. But it was you. The doctor said twins at first. Then she looked at the ultrasound again and said, actually, I need to look at this more closely. And then she said, 4 babies. That sounds very overwhelming, Malik observed. It was terrifying, Nadia admitted. I was alone in a country I had only lived in for 6 months. I had no family nearby. I had just left the man I had planned to marry. And suddenly I was going to have 4 babies at once. But you did not tell him, Rayan said quietly, even then. Why not? Because by then, I had made a decision. He had chosen someone else. He had dismissed my concerns. He had made me feel like I could not trust my own perceptions. And I decided that if I was going to raise you, I was going to do it on my own terms, without depending on someone who had already shown me he would not stand by me when things got difficult. She met each of their eyes in turn. I want you to understand something. I did not keep you from your father to punish him. I kept you from him because I genuinely believed I was protecting you. I thought he would not be a good father. I thought he would let you down the way he let me down. And I could not bear the idea of watching that happen. Were you wrong? Zahir asked. About him being a bad father? I do not know yet, Nadia answered honestly. That is what we are going to find out. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Nadia made arrangements for the journey. She pulled the Wanderer out of dry dock, the 70-foot sailboat she had purchased 2 years ago when Zahir Textiles had finally started generating the kind of revenue that made such purchases possible. She had bought it partly for practicality, partly because she loved sailing, and partly because she had wanted proof that she had made it, that she had built something real from the ashes of her old life. Now she was going to sail that proof right into Monaco harbor and face the man who had broken her heart. The children helped with preparations in their own ways. Zahir appointed herself captain of morale, making lists of things they should see and do on their adventure. Malik researched yacht specifications and sailing conditions in the Mediterranean with an intensity that suggested he was preparing for a naval exam. Amira organized their luggage with color-coded systems that put professional packers to shame. And Rayan watched everything quietly, occasionally offering observations that cut straight to the heart of whatever problem they were facing. 3 days before they were scheduled to depart, Nadia sat in her studio late at night, staring at the invitation that had started all of this. She had not responded to it. She had not called Julian or sent a message or announced her coming. Part of this was strategic. She wanted him to be unprepared. She wanted to see his genuine reaction when he met his children, not a performance he had time to rehearse. But part of it, she admitted to herself in the quiet darkness, was fear. She was afraid that if she gave him warning, she might lose her nerve, might talk herself out of going, might find excuses to protect her heart one more time. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elena, her closest friend and business partner, who had been skeptical of this entire plan from the moment Nadia had announced it. Are you sure about this? Elena had written, You have spent 4 years building a life without him. What if this destroys everything you have worked for? Nadia typed back slowly. What if it gives my children something I cannot provide on my own? A father, a sense of where they came from, the answer to questions they are going to ask, eventually whether I want them to or not. Elena's response came immediately. Or what if it gives them a man who has already proven he will choose his own comfort over commitment? Then I will know for certain, Nadia replied. and I can stop wondering. Stop carrying the weight of this secret. Stop building walls around a wound that might have healed by now if I had let it see sunlight. She set down her phone and looked out the window at the Marrakesh night. Somewhere out there, Julian Harcourt was probably preparing for his yacht's maiden voyage, surrounded by wealthy guests and powerful allies, completely unaware that his entire world was about to shift on its axis. Good, she thought. Let him be surprised. Let him feel for just one moment the way she had felt 4 years ago when she had discovered those photographs. Off balance, uncertain, forced to confront a reality he had not prepared for. It was petty. She knew it was petty. She did not care. The journey to Monaco took 4 days. 4 days of open water and endless sky, and children who discovered they loved sailing with an intensity that surprised everyone, including themselves. Malik spent hours learning navigation from the captain Nadia had hired to help crew the Wanderer. He absorbed information about currents and charts and the mathematics of plotting a course with the same intensity he brought to his architectural obsessions. By the second day, he could read the instruments and offer corrections that were occasionally more accurate than the captain's own calculations. Zara had appointed herself entertainment director. She organized elaborate games that somehow involved pirates, dragons, kingdoms, and complex political negotiations that required everyone's participation. Even the captain found himself drawn into her imaginative world, playing the role of a reformed pirate who had once terrorized the seas but now worked for the Dragon Queen. Amira discovered that she loved organizing the boat. She rearranged storage compartments, created inventory systems for supplies, designated specific locations for specific items, and enforced these designations with the gentle but implacable authority of someone who genuinely could not rest until everything was in its proper place. And Rayan sat at the bow for hours, watching the water, watching the horizon, watching his siblings and his mother with those quiet eyes that missed nothing. Occasionally he would point out dolphins or unusual cloud formations or ships passing in the distance, but mostly he simply observed, taking in the world with the patience of someone who understood that understanding required attention. On the third night, when the younger three were asleep and Malik was in the wheelhouse getting a nighttime navigation lesson, Rayan found Nadia on deck. "Mama," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "Are you scared?" She considered lying, considered protecting him from the reality of her emotions. But Rayan always knew when she was lying. It was one of his most unsettling and most valuable qualities. "Yes," she admitted, "very scared. Of him, of our father, of all of it, of seeing him again, of watching you meet him, of finding out whether I made the right choice 4 years ago or whether I was just running away." Rayan was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars reflected on the black water. "I think you made the choice you needed to make at the time," he finally said. "With the information you had. That does not mean it was wrong. It just means now you have more information. Now you can make a different choice if you want to." "When did you get so wise?" Nadia asked, half amazed and half frightened by the depth of her youngest son. "I listen," Rayan replied simply. "Most people talk too much to hear what is really being said, but I like listening. You learn more that way." He leaned against her shoulder, small and warm and steady. "I am not scared of meeting him," he added. "I am curious. I want to see if he looks like me. Malik says I have his eyes. I want to know what that means, where I came from. What if he disappoints you?" Rayan considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "Then he disappoints me, and I will be sad for a while. And then I will keep being exactly who I am, because he is only part of where I came from. You are the other part, and everything I have learned and done and become. He cannot take that away. He can only add to it or not add to it. The choice of how I respond is mine." Nadia pulled her son close and held him, this impossibly old soul in a 4-year-old body, and felt tears she had been holding back for days finally fall. "I love you," she whispered into his hair. "All 4 of you. So much." "I know," Rayan replied. "That is why we are not scared, because we know whatever happens, we have you. That is enough. Everything else is just extra." They sat together in the starlight until Nadia's tears had dried, and her resolve had hardened into something that felt almost like courage. Tomorrow they would reach Monaco. Tomorrow she would face Julian Harcourt. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight she had this quiet moment with her quiet son, this boat full of children she had built her world around. This proof that she had survived and thrived and become someone who could not be broken by whatever came next. That would have to be enough. On the morning of August 15th, the Wanderer sailed into Monaco harbor and dropped anchor within sight of Poseidon's Grace. The mega yacht was everything Nadia had expected and nothing she was prepared for. 300 feet of gleaming white hull, multiple decks sparkling with what were surely thousands of champagne glasses and hundreds of designer gowns. The kind of vessel that appeared in magazines alongside headlines about men who shaped global markets with single decisions. The kind of obscene wealth that most people could not even conceptualize. The Quadruplets gathered at the rail of the Wanderer, staring at their father's floating palace with expressions ranging from excitement to skepticism to analytical assessment. "That boat is inefficient," Amira announced, her tone suggesting this was a serious character flaw. "Look at how much space there is that probably does not get used. Poor resource allocation." "It is pretty, though," Zahra countered. "Like a floating wedding cake. If wedding cakes were bigger than buildings and had helicopters on them." She squinted. "Is that a helicopter? I want to see the helicopter." "Boats do not need to be pretty," Malik said. He had his tablet out and was comparing Poseidon's Grace to the specifications he had researched. "They need to not sink, although I admit the engineering is impressive. That is a lot of weight to keep above water." Rayan said nothing, but his hand found Nadia's and squeezed. He always knew when she was struggling, even when she was trying very hard not to show it. "Listen to me carefully," Nadia said, crouching down to their level. "The person who owns that yacht is your father. You are going to meet him today. He does not know you exist. This is going to be a very big surprise for him." 4 small faces watched her with varying degrees of understanding. "If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, you tell me immediately," she continued. "This is not about making anyone happy except you 4. Whatever happens on that boat, however he reacts, it does not change anything about who you are or how loved you are. Your worth is not determined by anyone's response to you. Clear?" "Clear," they chorused, though Zahra looked like she had questions and Amira was already calculating optimal exit strategies. "One more thing," Nadia added. "I am going to do my best to be calm and fair and give him a chance to prove himself. But I may not always succeed. This man hurt me very badly once. If I get upset or say things that seem harsh, I need you to understand that is between him and me. It is old hurt that has nothing to do with you. Whatever happened between your father and me before you were born, you are innocent of all of it. You do not need to choose sides or feel guilty or try to fix anything. Your only job is to be yourselves and see how you feel. Understood?" 4 nods. 4 pairs of eyes that trusted her completely. 4 small humans who had no idea what they were about to walk into. Nadia straightened her emerald silk dress, her own design naturally, and prepared to board her ex-fiancé's yacht with 4 children who were about to fundamentally alter his understanding of reality. "Before I continue with this moment that is about to change everything, I need to pause and speak directly to you. We are entering the heart of this story now. Everything Nadia has built over 4 years, every wall she has constructed, every truth she has hidden, is about to come crashing into Julian Harcourt's perfectly ordered world. If you are invested in what happens next, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now, not just because it helps the channel, but because it tells me you are here. You are listening. You are part of this community of people who believe that real stories matter. Share this video with someone who has ever had to face their past when they were not ready. Someone who has built walls to survive and then wondered if those walls had become a prison. Someone who needs to know that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. And if you are not subscribed to Mr. Dalton's Storyhouse yet, now is the moment. Click that button. Because what happens next is going to test everything you think you know about forgiveness, about family, and about whether people can truly change. Now let me take you onto that yacht, where a billionaire is about to meet the children he never knew he had. The transfer from the Wanderer to Poseidon's Grace required a tender, a smaller boat that ferried them across the gap between vessels. Nadia held Amira's hand on one side and Rayan's on the other, while Zahra and Malik sat across from her, their small faces showing the first signs of nervousness. "When we get there," Malik said quietly, "how will we know which person is him? There will be a lot of people." "You will know," Nadia replied. "He looks like you." "Well, you look like him. Tall, dark hair, hazel eyes." "Like Rayan's eyes," Zahra said, glancing at her brother. "Exactly like Rayan's eyes." The tender reached the yacht's boarding platform. Nadia helped her children onto the steps and climbed up behind them, emerging onto a deck filled with the kind of people who appeared on magazine covers and in financial news reports. Heads turned immediately. 4 children in matching linen outfits. Zahra had insisted they were not a singing group and had sulked about the matching element for 3 days, stood out dramatically among the champagne glasses and haute couture. A security guard stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral but clearly uncertain. "I am sorry, madam, but this is a private event. Your name?" "Nadia Zahir. I believe Mr. Harcourt will want to see me." The guard checked his tablet, scrolling through what was clearly a comprehensive guest list. "I am sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Your name is not on the list. I will need to ask you to return to your vessel, then add it to the list. Tell Julian Harcourt that Nadia Zahir is here. He will want to know." Something in her voice made the guard hesitate. Perhaps it was the confidence that came from building an empire. Perhaps it was the steel that came from surviving what she had survived. Or perhaps it was simply that mothers of quadruplets developed a certain tone that made resistance feel inadvisable. He spoke into his earpiece, waited, spoke again. His expression shifted from dismissive to confused to something approaching alarm. "Mr. Harcourt is coming personally," he said, stepping aside. The wait felt endless. People were staring openly now, whispers spreading through the crowd like ripples on water. Nadia kept her spine straight and her expression neutral, her hand resting on Rayon's shoulder. Then she saw him. Julian Harcourt moved through the crowd with the kind of urgency she had never seen from him. He was usually so controlled, so measured, so perfectly paced. But he was practically running now, his expensive suit jacket flying behind him, his face pale beneath its Mediterranean tan. He stopped 10 feet away, staring at her, then at the children, then back at her. "Nadia," he breathed, and then he could not seem to say anything else. His eyes moved from one small face to the next. Nadia watched him do the math, watched him count backward 4 years, watched his face go from pale to absolutely bloodless as the calculation completed itself. "They are mine," he said finally. "And it was not a question. This is where I came in. This is the moment I showed you at the very beginning." Julian frozen on the deck of his mega yacht, surrounded by guests and glamour and everything money could buy, facing 4 children who were worth more than all of it combined. "Biologically, yes," Nadia replied, her voice steady. "In every other way that matters, they are mine alone. I raised them. I built our life. I came here because they deserve to know where they came from. But Julian, whether they get to know you is something we will determine based on your actions, not your DNA." Julian's composure cracked. Not slightly, but completely. "Why?" His voice broke on the word. 4 years, Nadia. I had children for 4 years and I did not know. I thought about you every day. I hired investigators. I sent that invitation because I could not accept that you had just vanished. And all this time I had a family? You chose someone else." The words fell between them like a door slamming shut. 4 years of pain compressed into 4 syllables. "The night before I left," she continued, her voice low enough that only he could hear, "I found the photographs. You and Celeste Montague at that hotel in Prague. The same hotel you told me you could not visit because of meetings. I confronted you, and you looked me in the eye and told me I was being paranoid, that I was sabotaging us with my jealousy." Julian's face had gone from pale to something approaching gray. "I found out I was pregnant a week after I left," Nadia finished. "By then, I had already decided you had made your choice, and it was not me." Around them, the party continued, but in a muted way. People pretended not to be watching. The security guard had clearly communicated something to the staff because there was now a subtle perimeter forming around their confrontation, giving them space while preventing anyone from getting too close. "Mama?" Zahra's voice cut through the tension. "Is this the part where adults yell at each other? Because if so, we have concerns." The absurdity of it almost made Nadia smile. Here she was, facing down the billionaire who had shattered her heart, surrounded by his wealthy guests, engaged in what was probably the most emotionally charged conversation of her life, and her 4-year-old wanted to know if things were about to get too loud. "No yelling, baby. We are just talking. Talking very loud with our faces," Malik observed. "That is yelling without sound." Julian looked at the children, really looked at them, and something in his expression shifted. Wonder mixing with grief, devastation mingling with desperate hope. "Can we go somewhere private?" he asked, his voice rough. "Please, I want to talk to them, to you, but not here, not in front of everyone." Nadia considered refusing, considered making him suffer publicly the way she had suffered privately for 4 years, considered walking away right now and letting him spend the rest of his life wondering what might have been. But her children were watching, and they deserved better than to witness their mother choosing cruelty. "Lead the way," she said. Julian led them through the yacht, past staring guests and whispering staff, through corridors lined with art that probably cost more than most people's houses, until they reached a private study on the upper deck. The room was all leather and mahogany. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Mediterranean. A desk that could have served as a small aircraft carrier dominated one corner. Everything about it screamed wealth and power and control. The children arranged themselves on a leather sofa that probably cost more than Nadia's first apartment. Their legs dangled above the floor. Their eyes watched their parents with the intense focus children reserve for situations they know are important. "How old are they?" Julian asked again, though he clearly already knew. 4 years and 3 months. "And their names?" Nadia looked at each of her children in turn. These 4 humans who had given her reason to survive when survival had seemed impossible. Zahra. She is the eldest by 12 minutes. She was born first and has never let anyone forget it. Malik. He came second. He has not stopped analyzing and improving things since the moment he opened his eyes. Amira. Third. She likes order and patterns and understanding how things fit together. And Ryan. Last, but certainly not least. He watches. He listens. He sees more than anyone expects. Julian absorbed these names like they were sacred texts. His eyes moved from one face to the next, matching names to features, seeing himself reflected in 4 different variations. "Hello," he said finally, crouching down to their level. "I am Julian, and apparently, I am your father." "Hi," Zahra replied, taking the lead as she always did. "I have questions." "Of course you do. That is fair. You can ask me anything. Why did you not look for us before? If you loved Mama, why did you not try harder to find her?" Julian flinched at the directness, but to his credit, he did not look away. "I did try," he said carefully. "I hired people to search for her. But your mother is very good at disappearing when she wants to. And I think," he hesitated, looking at Nadia briefly, "I think maybe I did not try as hard as I should have. Because part of me believed I had lost the right to find her." "Why?" Malik asked. "What did you do?" "I hurt her," Julian said simply. "I was selfish and careless with her feelings. I let my pride get in the way of listening to her pain. And by the time I realized what I had lost, she was gone." It was honest, more honest than Nadia had expected, more honest than the Julian she remembered would have been. Amira spoke next, her voice precise and analytical. "What is your position on resource allocation and environmental sustainability?" Julian blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. "I am," he said slowly, heavily invested in green shipping initiatives. "My company has reduced maritime carbon emissions by 40% since 2020. We are also developing solar-powered cargo vessels and investing in ocean cleanup technology." Amira considered this. "Acceptable. You may continue." "Continue? Continue what?" "The audition," Zahra explained. "We are deciding if you get to be our father. You have to pass tests." "What kind of tests?" "Different kinds." Zahra had clearly been preparing for this conversation. Amira tests for environmental stuff. Malik tests for engineering and architecture things. Rayon tests for lying because he always knows when people are lying. "And what do you test for?" Julian asked. Zahra considered the question seriously. "I test for adventure, and for whether you are boring. Boring people are not allowed to be our father." "That seems fair," Julian said, and despite everything, Nadia saw the ghost of a smile cross his face. "What can I do to prove I am not boring?" "Tell us a story," Zahra commanded, "but not a boring one. An exciting one, with dragons and battles, and maybe also some educational content because Mama likes when stories have educational content." Julian looked at Nadia, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like gratitude. Gratitude that these children existed. Gratitude that they were giving him a chance. Gratitude that they were, despite everything, open to the possibility of knowing him. "All right," he said, settling himself on the floor in front of them so they could see him clearly. "Let me tell you about the time I nearly sank a ship in a hurricane because I was too stubborn to admit I needed help." The children leaned forward, Even Ryan, who rarely showed obvious interest in anything, tilted his head slightly, and Julian began to tell a story. It was, Nadia had to admit, a very good story. Genuinely exciting. Actually educational. He talked about sailing and weather patterns and the importance of listening to people who know more than you do. He made it funny where it needed to be funny and serious where it needed to be serious. He held their attention for 20 minutes straight, which was an accomplishment with 4-year-olds under any circumstances, let alone these particular 4-year-olds. When he finished, Zahra nodded with the gravity of a judge delivering a verdict. That was acceptable. You have passed my test. I am glad to hear it. But you still have more tests, Malik reminded him. I want to know about boat architecture. This yacht seems structurally ambitious. What is the draft depth? 12 feet, Julian replied, and then he was off, discussing engineering concepts with a 4-year-old who asked follow-up questions that would have impressed a graduate student. Nadia watched this unfold with something she could not quite name. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was something. Julian was good with them. Patient. Engaged. Genuinely interested in what they had to say. He treated them like people, not obligations or novelties or inconveniences. He answered their questions seriously. He did not talk down to them or over their heads. He was, she realized with a complicated twist in her chest, exactly the kind of father she had hoped he would be. Back when she had believed in him. Back when she had believed in them. The question was whether she could trust this version of him. Whether this was real or just another performance designed to get what he wanted. Time would tell. It always did. After the engineering discussion had run its course and Amira had asked several more questions about sustainable maritime practices, Rayan finally spoke. He had been quiet through all of this, watching with those hazel eyes that were exactly his father's. Now he addressed Julian directly. You said you made mistakes, that you were selfish and careless. Yes, Julian acknowledged, meeting his son's gaze steadily. I did. I was. Have you fixed those things? Are you different now? I have worked very hard to be different, Julian said carefully. I have been in therapy for 4 years, trying to understand why I made the choices I made and how to make better ones. I cannot promise I am perfect. Nobody is perfect, but I can promise I am trying. Trying is good, Rayan said after a long pause, but trying is not the same as doing. We will watch what you do, then we will know for sure. That is fair, Julian agreed. You should absolutely judge me by my actions and not my words. I will do my best to prove myself worthy of your trust. The conversation continued for another hour. They talked about where Julian lived and where Nadia lived, and how far apart those places were. They talked about what Julian did for work and what Nadia did for work and how babies got made, a question from Zahra that made both adults freeze before Nadia delivered a highly simplified and age-appropriate explanation. Through it all, Nadia watched Julian carefully, looking for cracks, for signs that this openness was performative rather than genuine, for evidence that he had not really changed at all. She did not find any, which was almost worse, because if he had truly changed, if he had become the man she had once believed he could be, then she would have to confront a terrible question. Had she been wrong to keep the children from him? Had her pain cost her children 4 years with a father who could have loved them well? It was easier to believe he was incapable of change. Easier to believe she had protected them from someone who would have disappointed them. Harder to accept that she might have made a mistake. When the hour was up, Nadia stood and gathered her children. We should go, she said. This has been a lot for everyone. We can discuss next steps once we have all had time to process. Wait, Julian said, standing too quickly. Is there any chance I could see them again? Before you leave? We will be in Monaco for 2 more days, Nadia replied carefully. I had planned to give the children a chance to see the city. If you want to join us for part of that time, we can discuss it. I would like that. Very much. She gave a short nod. I will send you a message tomorrow about timing. For now, we need to go. She had expected him to argue, to push for more. The Julian she remembered always pushed for more. But this Julian simply nodded. Of course. Whatever you need. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for telling them about me. Thank you for giving me a chance. Do not thank me yet, Nadia said quietly. This is just the beginning. The real test is what comes after. Whether you show up consistently, whether you follow through on promises, whether you become someone they can count on or just another adult who disappoints them. I understand. Do you? Because 4 years ago, you understood a lot of things. You understood you loved me. You understood you wanted to marry me. And then you did not understand any of it when it mattered. Julian absorbed the blow without flinching. You are right, he said. I failed you. I failed us. I cannot change what happened. All I can do is show you that I have learned from it, that I am not the same man who let you walk away, that I will spend however long it takes proving that to you. Nadia had no response to that. So she took her children and left, walking through the yacht with her head high and her heart turbulent and 4 small hands holding onto her dress like she was the safest harbor in a storm. They returned to the Wanderer as the sun set over Monaco, painting the sea in shades of gold and rose. The children were uncharacteristically quiet, processing everything that had happened. It was Zara, predictably, who broke the silence. Mama, she said thoughtfully, I think he is not boring. That is good to know. And he knows about boats. Malik added, really knows about them. He understood about load-bearing elements. His environmental policies need improvement but show genuine commitment, Amira contributed. He has kind eyes, Rayan said quietly, like mine, but sad underneath. Nadia pulled them all close. 4 small bodies pressed against her, 4 heartbeats she could feel through her thin dress. This does not change anything about us, she told them. Whatever happens with him, we are still a family. You are still safe and loved and exactly where you belong. He is just a possibility, an addition, not a replacement for anything we already have. We know, Mama, Zara replied, patting her shoulder in a gesture that was clearly meant to be comforting. We are not worried. We are just curious, and maybe a little hopeful. Hopeful for what? Zara considered this carefully. For more, for adventure, for finding out what happens next. Nadia kissed the top of her daughter's head and wondered, not for the first time, when her children had become wiser than she was. Tomorrow, they would see Julian again. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But tonight, she had this boat full of children she adored, this life she had built from nothing, this proof that she was strong enough for whatever came next. That would have to be enough. And part of her, the part she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge, wondered if maybe, just maybe, enough was not all she was hoping for anymore. Maybe she was hoping for something more. Maybe they all were. The next morning dawned bright and clear over Monaco harbor. Nadia woke before the children, as she always did, and stood on the deck of the Wanderer watching the sunrise paint the water in shades of pearl and amber. She had not slept well. Her mind had replayed the previous day's confrontation on an endless loop. Julian's face when he first saw the children, the way his composure had cracked completely, the sound of his voice when he said their names, like he was learning a prayer he should have known his whole life. And under all of it, a question she did not want to answer. Had she been wrong? She had been so certain 4 years ago that she was protecting her children, that Julian would disappoint them the way he had disappointed her, that keeping them away from him was an act of love, not cowardice. But watching him with them yesterday, watching him listen and engage and treat them like the remarkable humans they were, she had felt the first crack in that certainty. What if she had been wrong? What if her pain had cost her children something precious? Mama. Ryan's voice came from behind her. You are thinking very loud again. She turned to find her youngest son wrapped in a blanket, his hair wild from sleep, those hazel eyes already alert despite the early hour. Did I wake you? No. I always wake up when you are worried. It is like an alarm in my heart. Nadia opened her arms and Rayan walked into them, pressing his small body against hers. What are you worried about? He asked. Everything. Nothing. The past. The future. Whether I have made good choices. Rayan considered this with the seriousness he brought to everything. You made the choices you needed to make, he said finally. With the information you had. Now you have more information. Now you can make different choices if you want to. It was almost exactly what he had said before. And it was, Nadia realized, the wisest thing anyone had said to her in years. When did you become so wise? She asked. I listen, Rayan replied simply. And I think a lot. Mostly I think about how things connect. How one choice leads to another choice, leads to another choice. Like dominoes. You cannot always see where the dominoes will fall when you push the first one. But that does not mean you were wrong to push it. Nadia held him tighter and felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. I love you, she whispered. I know. Rayan pulled back to look at her. Are we going to see him again today? Julian? If you want to. Do you want to? Yes. I want to see what he does when there is no audience. When it is just us. That is when you really see who someone is. That is very true. Also, Rayan added, Zahra has been making a list of tests since she woke up at 5 in the morning. She is very committed to this process. Despite everything, Nadia laughed. Of course she is. The rest of the morning unfolded in the controlled chaos that characterized life with quadruplets. Breakfast, arguments about clothing, negotiations about hairstyles, Zahra's insistence that they needed a formal testing protocol, and Malik's counter-insistence that formal protocols were unnecessarily bureaucratic. By 10 o'clock, they were ready. Nadia had sent Julian a message suggesting they meet at the Jardin Exotique, a botanical garden overlooking the harbor. Neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, private enough for real conversation. Julian had responded immediately. He would be there, whatever she wanted, whatever the children needed. The eagerness in his message made something twist in Nadia's chest. She did not want him to be eager. She wanted him to be predictable, disappointing, easy to dismiss. She wanted him to make this simple. But nothing about Julian Harcourt had ever been simple. They arrived at the garden to find Julian already waiting. He was dressed casually, or what passed for casual among billionaires. Designer jeans, a linen shirt that probably cost more than most people's rent, sunglasses pushed up on his head. He looked nervous. Actually nervous. His hands kept moving, adjusting his watch, running through his hair, clasping and unclasping in front of him. Hello, he said when they approached. Thank you for coming. I was not sure you would. I said I would, Nadia replied evenly. I keep my word. The implied contrast landed. Julian's expression flickered with something that might have been shame. Yes, you do. You always did. The children, less interested in adult subtext, had already moved toward the garden entrance. Malik was examining a map of the grounds with intense focus. Zahra was pointing at something in the distance and explaining her testing methodology to anyone who would listen. Amira was reading informational plaques about the various plant species, and Rayan was watching Julian with those quiet, assessing eyes. They spent 3 hours in the garden, 3 hours of wandering paths, lined with exotic plants and cacti and succulents from around the world. 3 hours of children asking questions and Julian answering them. 3 hours of Nadia watching, evaluating, looking for cracks in his performance. She did not find any. Julian was patient when Malik wanted to discuss the engineering of the irrigation systems. He was enthusiastic when Zahra declared that a particular cactus looked like a dragon and demanded he participate in an elaborate story about its magical properties. He was attentive when Amira explained her theories about optimal plant spacing for maximum growth efficiency. And he was gentle with Rayan, never pushing, never demanding interaction, simply making himself available for whatever Rayan wanted to offer. At one point, when the children had run ahead to explore a new section of the garden, Julian fell into step beside Nadia. They are incredible, he said quietly. You have done an amazing job with them. I know. I mean it. They are smart and curious and kind and confident. They challenge adults without being disrespectful. They think for themselves. They support each other. That does not happen by accident. That happened because you raised them well. Nadia did not respond. She was not ready to accept compliments from him. Not yet. I want to tell you something, Julian continued, about what happened 4 years ago, about Celeste. I do not want to talk about her. I know. But I need you to understand. The photographs you found, they were staged. Nadia stopped walking. She turned to face him, her expression carefully neutral. What do you mean, staged? Julian ran a hand through his hair. A nervous gesture she remembered from years ago. Celeste was working with one of my competitors, a man named Roland Graves. He wanted to destroy my company and my personal life. Celeste was the weapon he chose. She engineered situations that looked damning, had photographers positioned to capture specific angles, created evidence of an affair that never actually happened. Nadia felt something cold settle in her chest. You're telling me you never slept with her? I never slept with her. I never even kissed her. The photographs were deliberately misleading. She was standing close to me at events, touching my arm, leaning in to whisper things. All of it calculated to look like intimacy when there was none. And you expect me to believe this? After 4 years? I do not expect anything, Julian said quietly. But I am telling you the truth. The investigation came out 2 years ago. Graves is in prison now for corporate espionage and fraud. Celeste testified against him in exchange for immunity. Everything came out. Every detail of how they manipulated both of us. Nadia's mind was racing. 2 years. He had known the truth for 2 years. If you knew this 2 years ago, why did you not find me then? Why did you wait until now? I tried. Julian's voice cracked. I hired the best investigators money could buy. I searched for you in every country I could think of. But you had changed your name, built a new identity, disappeared into a life I could not trace. It was not until 6 months ago that one of my investigators found a connection to Zahir Textiles. And even then, I was not sure it was you. I sent that invitation as a last hope. Nadia stood frozen, processing this information. If what he was saying was true, then she had left him for nothing. She had kept his children from him for 4 years based on a lie. She had built her entire identity around surviving his betrayal, and that betrayal had never happened. But that was not the whole story, and she knew it. Even if the photographs were staged, she said slowly, even if you never touched Celeste, that does not change what happened when I confronted you. I came to you with my concerns. I told you what I had seen, and you dismissed me. You called me paranoid. You accused me of sabotaging our relationship. You chose to protect your pride instead of hearing my pain. Julian's face crumpled. You are right. You did not have to sleep with her to betray me. You betrayed me by not believing me, by not taking my concerns seriously, by making me feel like I was crazy for trusting my own perceptions. I know. So do not stand here and act like the staged photographs are the whole story. The photographs were the evidence, but your response was the betrayal. Julian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. You are absolutely right. I failed you. Even if I had not done what you thought I had done, I responded to your pain with dismissal instead of compassion. I was so sure of my own righteousness that I could not see I was losing the only person who mattered. That is on me, regardless of what Celeste did or did not do. Nadia felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but something. He was taking responsibility, not making excuses, not deflecting blame. He was acknowledging that his response had been wrong, independent of whether the underlying accusation was accurate. That was not the Julian she remembered. The Julian she remembered had never admitted fault, had never looked at his own behavior with critical eyes, had never been capable of the kind of honest self-reflection that this conversation required. Maybe he really had changed, or maybe he was just better at performing change. Time would tell. It always did. Mama, Zara's voice carried across the garden. We found a cactus that looks like a castle. You have to come see it. Nadia looked at Julian one more time, seeing the hope and pain and desperate sincerity in his eyes. We will talk more about this later, she said. For now, our children want us to look at a cactus. Our children. Julian repeated the words like they were a miracle. Our children. They walked toward the cactus together, not touching, not reconciled, but somehow, impossibly, beginning to share something neither of them had expected. Before I continue with this pivotal point in their journey, I need to pause and speak directly to you. We have just learned something that changes everything we thought we knew about this story. The photographs were staged. Julian never actually betrayed Nadia in the way she believed. But here's the question that matters. Does that change anything? Nadia made a powerful point. The photographs were the evidence, but Julian's response was the betrayal. He dismissed her pain. He called her paranoid. He chose his pride over her heart. If you have ever been in a situation where someone you loved refused to hear your concerns, refused to take your pain seriously, refused to believe that your perceptions were valid, then you understand exactly what Nadia felt. And you understand why staged photographs do not undo that harm. This is what we do at Mr. Dalton's Story House. We tell the complicated truth about love and betrayal, and the messy work of figuring out who deserves second chances. If this story is resonating with you, if you are questioning your own choices about forgiveness and trust, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think. Does learning about the staged photographs change how you see Julian? Does Nadia have the right to still be angry? Can you forgive someone for how they responded to you, even if the original accusation was wrong? Your voice matters in this community. Share this video with someone who has struggled with similar questions. And if you have not subscribed yet, This is the moment. Click that button, because the second half of this story is going to challenge everything you think you know about whether people can truly change. Now, let me continue. The rest of their time in Monaco passed in a blur of carefully supervised interactions. Julian joined them for meals, walked with them through the city, sat on the deck of the Wanderer, and let the children show him their favorite things about their boat. Through it all, Nadia watched, evaluated, looked for signs that this version of Julian was temporary, a performance designed to win back access to children he suddenly wanted. She did not find those signs. What she found instead was a man who listened more than he spoke, who asked questions instead of making assumptions, who admitted when he did not know something instead of pretending expertise he did not have, who treated her children with the respect they deserved and the patience they required. On their last evening in Monaco, after the children were asleep, Nadia sat on the deck alone. Julian had returned to his yacht hours ago, and she had the night to herself for the first time in days. She was not sure what to feel. Everything she had believed for 4 years was shifting. The certainty that had carried her through pregnancy and childbirth and the exhausting early years of quadruplet parenthood, the certainty that she had been betrayed and abandoned and right to walk away, that certainty was crumbling. In its place was something more complicated, more nuanced, more difficult to navigate. Julian had failed her. That was still true. His response to her concerns had been dismissive and cruel. He had chosen his pride over her pain. He had made her feel like she could not trust her own perceptions. But he had not done the things she had believed he had done. And he had spent 4 years, apparently, trying to become someone who would never dismiss someone's pain again. Did that matter? Did change count if it came too late? Could you forgive someone for a betrayal that had not happened the way you thought, while still holding them accountable for the betrayal that had? She did not have answers. She suspected she would not have answers for a long time. The next morning, they prepared to sail back to Morocco. Julian came to see them off, standing on the dock as they made ready to depart. "When can I see them again?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes betraying desperate hope. Nadia had thought about this all night. "You can come to Marrakesh," she said finally. "In 2 weeks. You can stay for a weekend. See where we live, how we live, meet the people who are part of our lives." "Really? This is not forgiveness," Nadia clarified. "This is not reconciliation. This is me giving you a chance to prove that what you showed me this week is real and sustainable. 1 good weekend does not erase 4 years of absence, even if that absence was not entirely your fault. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand that my children are my priority, not your redemption, not your feelings, not whatever you think might happen between us. If you come to Marrakesh and you disappoint them, you will not get another chance. I will not disappoint them. Words are easy, Julian. You were always good with words. What matters is what you do when no one is watching. What matters is whether you show up consistently even when it is inconvenient. What matters is whether you can be the kind of father they deserve or whether you are just playing a role until something more interesting comes along." Julian absorbed this without flinching. "I will prove myself," he said. "However long it takes, whatever I have to do. I will prove that I have changed. See that you do." She turned and walked up the gangplank to the Wanderer. The children waved goodbye from the deck. Julian waved back, his expression a complicated mixture of joy and grief and hope. As they sailed out of Monaco harbor, Nadia looked back once. Julian was still standing on the dock, watching them go, getting smaller and smaller, until he disappeared entirely. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time in 4 years, she was willing to find out. 2 weeks later, Julian arrived in Marrakesh. He had texted every day in the interim. Short messages, updates about his schedule, questions about what the children were doing. Nothing pushy or demanding, just consistent presence, making himself part of their lives in whatever way Nadia would allow. The children had responded with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Zara sent him voice messages describing her latest adventures. Malik shared photos of his architectural drawings and asked technical questions about building materials. Amira updated him on her latest organizational projects, and Rayan, in his quiet way, occasionally sent single sentences that somehow conveyed more than all the others combined. Today, the light in the garden was perfect. I found a beetle with exactly 17 spots. Mama smiled more than usual this morning. Nadia had watched these exchanges with a complicated heart. Her children were opening up to their father. building connections she had denied them for 4 years, finding something they had not known they were missing, and Julian was responding to each message with the care and attention it deserved. He was not performing for an audience. There was no one to impress with these private communications. He was simply being present, building relationship one small interaction at a time. Maybe he really had changed. Or maybe she was setting herself up for another devastating disappointment. She would find out this weekend. Julian arrived on a Friday afternoon, checking into a modest riad 3 streets away from Nadia's home. He had offered to stay in a luxury hotel, but Nadia had suggested the smaller, simpler option. She wanted to see how he handled being out of his element, whether he could adapt to a life that did not revolve around his comfort and convenience. He adapted beautifully. Over the next 3 days, Julian immersed himself in their world. He ate breakfast at their worn wooden table, helped Malik with his architecture projects, participated in Zara's elaborate games, discussed sustainable textile practices with Amira, sat in comfortable silence with Ryan, watching the light change in the garden. He was patient when things did not go according to plan, which with Quadruplets was constantly. He was flexible when schedules shifted. He was good-humored when the children tested his boundaries, which they did, because children always tested boundaries with new people. And he asked for nothing. He did not push Nadia for private conversations, did not try to recreate intimacy that no longer existed, did not act like this weekend was about winning her back rather than building relationship with their children. He was simply present, consistently, reliably, in exactly the way she had told him mattered. On the last night of his visit, after the children were asleep, they sat on the roof terrace of Nadia's riad. The Medina spread out below them, a maze of lights and shadows and the distant sounds of evening prayers. "This is beautiful," Julian said quietly. "What you have built here, the home, the business, the life. Thank you. I want you to know something." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I am not trying to take any of this from you. I am not trying to replace what you have built or insert myself into the center of it. I just want to be part of their lives, however you will let me. Whatever role you think is appropriate." Nadia studied him in the low light, looking for deception, finding none. "Why? Why what? Why do you want this? You have a company worth billions. You have power and influence and access to anything you want. You could have more children with someone else. Start over with someone who does not know your history. Why fight so hard for children you did not know existed until 3 weeks ago?" Julian was quiet for a long moment. "Because they are mine," he finally said. "Because the moment I saw them standing on that deck, I knew that nothing else I had ever achieved mattered. Because I have spent the last 4 years in therapy trying to understand why I let you walk away, and the answer I kept coming back to was that I did not know what mattered. I thought success was enough, achievement, status, but it was not. It was never enough, and now I have a chance to know them, to be their father, to matter to someone in a way that has nothing to do with money or power or what I can provide. I am not going to waste that chance." Pretty words. I know. Julian's smile was sad. "I was always good with pretty words. But you are right. What matters is what I do. So let me tell you what I am going to do." He leaned forward, his expression intent. "I am going to restructure my company, delegate more responsibility to my executive team. I have been looking for a reason to step back from daily operations anyway. This is the reason. I am going to come to Marrakesh every 2 weeks. More often, if you will let me. I am going to call them every night if they want me to. I am going to learn their schedules and their interests and their friends. I am going to be present for birthday parties and school events and ordinary Tuesday afternoons. And I am going to do all of this whether you ever forgive me or not. Because this is not about earning your forgiveness. This is about being the father they deserve." Nadia felt something shift inside her, something she had been holding very tightly for 4 years. "I do not trust you," she said honestly. "Maybe I never will, but I am willing to give you the chance to prove yourself. One visit at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. That is all I am asking for." "Good, because that is all I am offering." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars emerge over the Medina. It was not comfortable, exactly. There was too much history for comfort. But it was not hostile either. It was something new, something neither of them had experienced before. The possibility of a future built on different foundations than the past. 6 months passed. 6 months of Julian arriving in Marrakesh every 2 weeks like clockwork. 6 months of nightly video calls that started at 15 minutes and gradually extended to 30, then 45, then an hour. 6 months of small gestures and consistent presence and the slow, patient work of building relationship. The children blossomed under his attention. Zahra appointed him Minister of Adventure in the elaborate kingdom she had constructed. Malik found a partner for his architectural obsessions, someone who took his questions seriously and challenged him to think bigger. Amira discovered that Julian shared her love of systems and organization, and they spent hours discussing optimal approaches to various logistical challenges. And Rayan, slowly, carefully, began to talk. Not just one-sentence observations anymore, real conversations, thoughts and feelings and the deep questions that lived in his quiet mind. Nadia watched all of this with a complicated heart. She had been wrong. Wrong to keep the children from their father. Wrong to assume that Julian could not change. Wrong to let her pain dictate their possibilities. It was a hard thing to admit. Nadia Zahir did not like being wrong. She had built her entire identity around the certainty that she had made the right choices, that she had done what was necessary to protect herself and her children. But sometimes protecting yourself meant imprisoning yourself. And sometimes the walls you built for safety became the walls that kept joy from entering. Julian had proven himself. Consistently, reliably, month after month after month. He had restructured his company, just as he had promised. He had made Marrakesh a priority, just as he had promised. He had shown up for every birthday party, every school event, every ordinary moment that she had allowed him to be part of. He had become, against all her expectations, exactly the father she had always hoped he could be. The question was whether she could let him become anything more. It was Elena who finally pushed her to confront the question she had been avoiding. They were in Nadia's studio, reviewing designs for a new collection, when Elena set down her coffee and fixed Nadia with a knowing look. How long are you going to keep him at arm's length? Who? Do not play games with me. Julian, the man who has been flying to Morocco every 2 weeks for 6 months. The man who has become an excellent father to your children. The man you are clearly still in love with. I am not still in love with him. Elena's expression suggested she found this denial unconvincing. You watch him when you think no one is looking. You laugh at his jokes. You light up when he walks into a room. You are absolutely still in love with him. The only question is whether you are going to do anything about it. He hurt me. Yes, he did. And he has spent 6 months proving that he is not the same man who hurt you. At some point, you have to decide whether you are going to punish him forever for who he was, or give him credit for who he has become. It is not that simple, actually, Elena said gently. It is exactly that simple. You are scared. I understand being scared. But Nadia, you have spent 4 years building walls. At some point, walls stop being protection and start being prison. You have to decide which one yours are. Nadia did not have a response, because Elena was right. The walls had been necessary once. They had protected her through pregnancy and childbirth, and the exhausting early years of raising quadruplets alone. They had given her strength when she had none left. They had allowed her to build something remarkable from nothing. But now they were just walls, and she was tired of living behind them. The conversation with Julian happened 3 days later. He had arrived for his regular visit, and after the children were in bed, they sat on the roof terrace where they had talked so many times before. The Medina sprawled below them. The stars burned overhead, and Nadia finally asked the question she had been avoiding for 4 years. Why did you choose someone else? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Not for someone else, but why did you dismiss me so completely when I came to you with my concerns? Why did you make me feel like I was crazy for seeing what I saw? Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Because I was a coward. Nadia waited. You challenged me, Julian continued. Every day, in every way. You pushed me to be more authentic, more vulnerable, more honest about who I was and what I wanted. And I was terrified of that. I had spent my entire life performing confidence, performing success, performing the kind of masculinity I thought I was supposed to embody. And you saw through all of it. You saw the scared, uncertain person underneath. And I did not know how to handle being seen like that. That does not explain Celeste. Celeste was easy. Julian's voice cracked. She did not challenge me. She did not push me to be better. She just let me be who I was. And when you came to me with those photographs, when you confronted me with evidence of something I knew I had not done, I had a choice. I could look at myself honestly and ask why you would believe such things about me. Or I could dismiss your concerns and avoid that examination entirely. You chose to dismiss me. Yes, because examining myself would have meant admitting that I had created an environment where you could not trust me, that I had been distant and secretive and unavailable, that even if I had not slept with Celeste, I had been emotionally absent in ways that made you vulnerable to believing the worst. Nadia felt tears threatening and blinked them back. 4 years, she said. I spent 4 years believing you had betrayed me, building my life around surviving that betrayal, teaching myself not to need you or anyone else. And now you are telling me that the thing I believed, the specific thing, did not even happen. The photographs did not happen. Julian met her eyes directly. But the betrayal did. I betrayed you by not listening, by not taking your pain seriously, by choosing my comfort over your truth. That was real. That happened. And I am sorrier for it than I know how to express. Sorry does not undo 4 years. No. It does not. Nothing can undo 4 years. But I am here now, trying to be better, trying to show you that the man who dismissed you no longer exists. That I have spent 4 years in therapy and solitude and brutal self-examination becoming someone who would never make those choices again. Nadia looked at him, this man who had shattered her heart, who had spent 4 years learning to put the pieces back together, who was sitting here offering her the most vulnerable version of himself. I do not know if I can forgive you, she said honestly. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for possibility. The possibility of something different, something new. Something built on who we are now rather than who we were then. And what would that look like? I do not know. Julian's voice was steady. Maybe it looks like 2 people raising children together and never being anything more than CO parents. Maybe it looks like friendship. Maybe it looks like something neither of us has imagined yet. I am not attached to a specific outcome. I just want the chance to find out. Nadia was quiet for a long moment. 4 years ago, she had walked away from this man with her heart in pieces. She had built a life, an empire, a family from those pieces. She had proven that she did not need him to survive. But surviving was not the same as living, and she was tired of merely surviving. I am scared, she admitted. So am I. If I let you in, if I lower these walls, you could destroy me again. Yes, I could. But Nadia, I could also be the partner you deserved 4 years ago. The partner I was too scared and stupid to be then. I cannot change the past. But I can be different now. If you will let me try. She looked at him in the starlight. This man who had failed her so completely, who had spent years becoming someone who would never fail her that way again, who was offering her nothing but possibility and the willingness to work for whatever they might build. She thought about walls and prisons, about protection and isolation, about the difference between surviving and living. And she made a choice. Okay, she said quietly. We try. Slowly, carefully, one day at a time, but we try. Julian's face transformed, hope and gratitude, and something that looked like the beginning of joy. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. This is the beginning, not the end. You still have to prove yourself every single day. I will. I know you will try. The question is whether trying will be enough. It will be. Julian reached for her hand, then stopped, asking permission with his eyes. May I? She nodded. He took her hand gently. The first time they had touched in 4 years. It was not fireworks. It was not instant passion or overwhelming emotion. It was something quieter, something more sustainable, the beginning of something that might, with time and effort and consistent choice, become something real. I want to tell you something, Nadia said, something I have never told anyone, anything. When I found out I was pregnant, when the doctor told me it was quadruplets, I almost did not keep them, not because I did not want them, but because I was terrified. I was alone in a foreign country with no support system and 4 babies on the way. I did not know how I would survive. What changed your mind? I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be, what kind of life I wanted to build, and I realized that I could be someone who ran from hard things, or I could be someone who faced them. I chose to face them, and every day since then, I have chosen to keep facing them. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. But it made me who I am. You are extraordinary, Julian said softly. I knew that 4 years ago. I know it even more now. I am not telling you this for compliments. I am telling you because I need you to understand. I did not survive quadruplets alone because I am special. I survived because I made the choice to survive every single day, even when it would have been easier to give up. That is what I need from you. Not grand gestures or pretty words. The choice to show up every single day, even when it is hard. I understand. Do you? I do. Julian squeezed her hand gently. I spent 4 years learning what it means to make that kind of choice, not about children, but about myself, about becoming someone worth being. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, but it made me who I am now. Nadia looked at him and saw for the first time, not the man who had hurt her, but the man he had become. The man who had done the work. The man who was still doing the work. The man who was offering her everything he had learned in exchange for nothing more than the chance to try. Okay, she said again. Okay. They sat together in the starlight, hands intertwined, not speaking. There was nothing more to say. Everything that mattered now was in the doing. The doing was not easy. Nothing worth having ever was. But over the months that followed, they built something neither of them had expected. Not a return to what they had been. Something entirely new. A partnership forged in honesty and accountability, and the daily choice to show up for each other. The children watched with varying degrees of interest. Zahra announced that she had known all along that her parents would figure it out. Malik observed that the probability of successful reconciliation had been approximately 67% based on his calculations. Amira noted that their household systems would need adjustment to accommodate the new dynamic, and Rayan simply smiled his quiet smile, having known, as he always did, exactly what was going to happen. 1 year after that first meeting on the yacht, they sat together on the roof terrace, watching the children play in the garden below. Do you remember what you said to me that night? Julian asked. The first night we talked up here, I said a lot of things that night. You said that words are easy, that what matters is what you do when no one is watching. I remember. Have I done enough? Julian's voice was quiet. Have I proven myself yet? Nadia considered the question seriously. The year that had passed, the choices he had made, the man he had become. You have done enough to earn another chance, she said finally, and another after that, and another after that. I do not think there is a finish line, Julian. I think it is just choices. Every day. Forever. I can do that. Forever choices. Good. Because I am not going anywhere. And neither are you. No. Julian reached for her hand and she let him take it. Neither am I. Below them, Zahra organized her siblings into some elaborate new game. Malik explained the rules with unnecessary complexity. Amira adjusted the rules to be more efficient. And Rayan watched his parents on the roof, smiled, and returned to playing with a contentment that needed no words. This is where I leave you. But before I go, I want to speak to you one final time. This story was about many things. Betrayal and forgiveness. Survival and growth. The walls we build and the prisons they become. But mostly, it was about choice. Nadia chose to survive when survival seemed impossible. She chose to build something beautiful from broken pieces. She chose to protect her children, even when protection meant isolation. And eventually, she chose to risk her heart again, not because Julian had earned it perfectly, but because she was brave enough to want more than mere survival. Julian chose to examine himself when self-examination was painful. He chose to change when change was hard. He chose to show up consistently when consistency was inconvenient. And he chose to keep proving himself every single day, because that was what love actually looked like. Their children chose to give their father a chance even though he had been absent for 4 years. They chose to test him and challenge him and ultimately accept him, not because he was perfect, but because he was trying. Every single person in this story made choices. Hard choices. Scary choices. Choices that could have gone wrong. That is what life is. Not guarantees. Not certainties. Just choices, made in the dark, hoping they lead somewhere worth going. If you are facing a choice right now, if you are trying to decide whether to trust someone who hurt you, whether to take a chance on something that might fail, whether to tear down walls that have kept you safe but also kept you small, I want you to know something. You are braver than you think. You are stronger than you know. And whatever choice you make, you will survive it. because that is what humans do. We survive. And sometimes, if we are very lucky and very brave, we do more than survive. We live. Thank you for being here with me through this story. Thank you for your likes, your shares, your comments, your subscriptions. Thank you for being part of this community we are building together at Mr. Dalton's Story House. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is building walls, someone who is wondering if they should tear them down, someone who needs to know that second chances are possible when people are willing to do the work. Subscribe if you have not already. Turn on notifications, because we have more stories to tell. Stories about love and loss and the messy, complicated, beautiful work of becoming who we were meant to be. Until next time, remember, every day is a choice. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose with your whole heart.